Hi, Zizaran here with another video. This is going to be React content. So if that's what you're into, I'm going to be reacting. And if you're wondering where I am, I'm in New Zealand right now getting ready for ExileCon. That's in like a week, I think. So yeah, we're going to be watching this. It's like an hour, I think, an hour of content. And I have another video where I go over the patch notes and stuff like that. And actually, I react to Ben reading the patch notes. Oh my god, I'm a React Andy now. Are you looking for a PC for the upcoming year? We're having the golden age of ARPG coming up on us and a lot of new games coming out. If you're looking for a new PC, the Horizon line offers a great PC for the everyday gamer. Then you have the Voyager line for content creators and people really looking for a top-of-the-line PC. But while the logo might give you a hard time, the PCs will not. If you're looking for pre-built PCs, I'm using one myself. They've been really great so far. Can't go wrong with this one. Give yourself an edge for the upcoming year of game releases by heading over to starforgesystems.com and grab one of the best PCs in the universe.
Heard a lot.
Dude, to be fair, just off the bat, it must be so hard being like the public and front-facing figure of any company, right? Because it's not like you as an individual is ever... Like, it's very unlikely that you as an individual are ever, like, responsible for the things the players hate, and you're going to get so much shit flung your way, regardless of if you were against the changes or not, right? So it must fucking suck to be in any of their shoes. It must be really rough.
We want to, obviously acknowledge everyone's feedback in regards to reducing player power. We know it is bad. We know it is not fun. And it's something that we ourselves know that it's not the greatest play experience for players out there.
Especially in Season 1.
We do want to explain why we ended up doing it within the actual patch, and then of course we also want to talk about like what we were trying to achieve specifically with this patch and with the changes that players ended up seeing. And then separately, we do want to also talk about how we don't plan on doing a patch like this ever again.
Oh.
We have most definitely heard the feedback from the players on that front.
I don't know if that's a good thing either, though. That might be like overdoing it a little bit. Like, I know like nerf patches suck, but for the longevity of the game, I do actually think nerf patches are important. Like every between 6 to 15 or like 6 to 10, like they are important because you do get D3 without it. Like it's just important that you have more fun patches than nerf patches, and you can't start with a nerf patch. Like that is a bit of an overreaction. They just mean a patch that only has nerfs without buffs. Oh, sure. But I do still think it is important to have one correction patch now and again.
So I know that we've talked on stream before about our intentions for Diablo IV being a game about choice. And we know that reducing player power is never a good experience in general. CDR is one of the, if not the most powerful stat in many ways in Diablo IV. And the reason for it is obvious. When you're able to get CDR to a certain point, when using certain class mechanisms, you're able to get effectively like instantaneous like active skills. So like, that can give you like unlimited resource, it can give you unlimited movement speed, give you unlimited damage resist, and it begins to dwarf the effectiveness of other options when you can start trying to take these things into account. Now, we know that blasting through content with those things is really fun, so it feels really, really painful to have to take some of those things away.
Mm-hmm. I think every game struggles a little bit with the fact that like mana and cooldown just aren't good ways to limit the player. Like mana is definitely a better way to limit the player than cooldowns. Cooldowns is like infinitely the worst feeling way. The only time cooldown ever feels good, in my opinion, is if you have a real ultimate ability. Like a real proper ultimate ability that is like super, super impactful for your combat that you actually hold off on using till you use it. There, cooldown makes sense. For most other things, you really want to do mana, and even then, I think it's always just should be used as like a minor thing because mana also does not feel very good for the majority of players, right? Like it's I think most people agree that mana is a thing that just like once you've solved it, it's like, I can play the game now. And I don't think it necessarily feels super rewarding to solve it either. It feels more like a chore, at least to me. Like, I've never been like, man, I finally solved mana. I feel so clever and proud of myself. I'm like, oh my god, finally. Like, now I can play. It's more similar to what I feel, at least. I don't think any game has ever really solved it super well, in my opinion. Last Epoch, Path of Exile, like, there's been a few patches of Path of Exile where I'm like, okay, mana's really good. Like, and that was like when Spellslinger didn't cost anything. You could use that for clearing early, and you didn't necessarily have mana issues. And if you really wanted a high damage skill for bosses, then yeah, you would need to solve your mana. But that was kind of okay.
But they've taken on an outsized role as sort of this new endgame chase opportunity for players who are looking to really challenge themselves. And we love that we want that kind of content and we want that experience for those players. And we feel like we have done a reasonably.
Is that true though? I really don't feel like that personally. I think they can. I think they can turn Nightmare Dungeons into that. But at least as a hardcore player, I don't really feel an incentive to do 150. Like, I just don't feel like that's true. I don't ever feel incentivized to do anything more than what's just the best amount of XP for me. I really wish there was more of an incentive, right? Like, I really wish, like, oh man, I can finally do Nightmare Dungeons level 100 right now. Or, oh, wow, dude, I actually managed to do 110. Like, I really want that to be the case, but I don't feel like it is. If they aren't, what is left as the endgame? Well, that's the thing, right? That's what most of us are saying. There isn't much of an endgame right now. That's what a lot of us wish would change, right? To have more of an endgame. That's why we were hoping to get it in Season 1. And that's why you're seeing already now there are a lot of like RPG players that have maybe played for 1 or 2 days and they've stopped D4 already and are waiting for Season 2 instead. There needs to be something that can maybe drop at 110 that can't drop at 90. Something that can drop at 130 that can't drop at 110. There's no reason for me to do it. Like, at least, not for everyone. There are players that will do things just to do things, right? Just for the challenge. But there's a large amount of us that need a reason to do things. We want that risk versus reward. You can do 130. That's amazing. You are now rewarded with these things that you didn't have access to before. At least for me, that is like super important. Super important for me.
We don't feel that like tier 100 Nightmare Dungeons fulfill the same role at all.
Right.
Just the nature of the content type doesn't actually work well as that kind of pushing opportunity. So one thing we actually plan on doing, and we'd hope to get out as part of this release, we're going to get out very, very soon, is we're making a reduction in the difficulty of some aspects of Nightmare Dungeons to kind of retune some things. And the goal here is to say that, you know, we think that roughly where you are with like a Nightmare Dungeon tier 70, that's kind of where we actually want the difficulty to be for a tier 100 as players are going through the experience. So there's still a thing to push for, but it's more reasonable. And as part of this exchange, we know that players really like kind of blasting and pushing hard for these sorts of things. They feel like big achievements. We are going to be looking at creating a new content type, a new endgame content type. It's going to be more directly meant to address those sorts of players and give people more things to chase. I said before that Diablo IV is a game that is about choice, and that remains our goal. You know, that's our guiding light.
Okay, I feel like Rogue had really decent choice for a simpler game. But I didn't really feel like there was a large amount of choice on the other things. Not actual choices, anyway. I think it's very hard to do to begin with. But when they say that they are having that at the forefront, I think Rogue was really good, but I don't... Did anyone else feel like a lot of other things had choice? Like, especially Barbarian, I would say it's very bad for it. The fact that Barb has so little choice with, like, the shouts and stuff. Whereas, for example, on Sork, I felt like you are a crowd control machine, and that is your life. And Druid, I can't speak to. But some people are saying Druid had good choice. But honestly, Rogue is so fucking well designed. Like, Rogue is so nice. Like, I saw that everybody else was going Twisting Blades, and I tried Twisting Blades, and I was like, this feels dog shit. There must be something else. And there wasn't really many people playing anything else. I was like, I'm just going to try Pen Shot, because I tried Pen Shot in the alpha, and Pen Shot felt so good, and then Rapid Fire felt so good. And I really liked it. I really liked it. Like, I felt like Pen Shot felt better than Twisting Blades, which was the most meta build. Oh, Barrows and Death Trap felt amazing. Yeah, so I felt like Rogue is just like, honestly, if every class felt as good as Rogue, they really have something special already there. Because Rogue felt so good to me. Like I really want to give them a lot of applause for Rogue because I think it felt so amazing. And there's been a lot of negativity, so I think it's pretty worth to point out some happy things too. Just everything felt great on Rogue. Barrage isn't good for Uber bosses. What you just said, I think is exactly how it should be. I think that's the real way to get diversity on skills and stuff is to have different things for different reasons, right? Like when you're like, okay, like barrage is really good for this type of content, rapid fire is really good for this type of content, twisting blades is really tight for this type of content, and maybe even different play styles within that content, right? With having melee and ranged with maybe some advantages to melee like higher damage and survivability being an advantage that ranged often gets. Like that's like the real good way to really balance things, in my opinion. Like I really love I love a game that promotes specialized characters.
Vulnerable damage is a really outsized role that it plays in terms of a lot of build making, and to the point where it feels that you'll get to certain parts of content and creatures sort of need to be vulnerable in order for you to feel that you need to
Pretty much
damage them.
So I felt.
This is something that we're very aware of, and we made a reduction as part of the 1.1 build that reduced player damage in general because most players rely on vulnerability.
I think that's like the best change they did, right? Like vulnerability was something that actively felt bad because it was so strong, and I think I'd like to think it was very few people thought vulnerability shouldn't be nerfed. I think they should entirely remove vulnerability from crossbows and put close damage instead. I think that makes a lot more sense. Having vulnerable damage anywhere just makes it so mandatory.
Vulnerable damage is far more potent right now than we actually want it to be in general across the game. I think I've talked about this before. And we need to make a number of, we need to kind of bring these things back in line.
Honestly, it's not going to be make or break, and obviously like they've already probably made their money back on Diablo 4, but Season 2 is very important for the longevity of the game.
About here really quickly, but one thing that we will commit to right now is that next Friday, so exactly 1 week from now, we'll be back on a live stream because we will start with that live stream where we will be talking about our next patch that will be coming to Diablo 4. We'll talk a little bit about some of the details here, but we'll go into more detail next Friday specifically. But we will be back on here to kind of go through the whole entire patch notes with everyone beforehand, so everyone has a better expectation of what they're going to be seeing in the actual update, and they can talk to us through chat, through devs, or through social media, through Reddit, through our forums, etc. beforehand, before the actual patch hits. So
we're going to be increasing the density in Helltide as well. Now, with the Nightmare Dungeon changes across the board for Nightmare Dungeons, all Nightmare Dungeons will get more dense. More monsters, more players, more stuff going on.
I don't think monster density is the main issue. Okay, it is, but something that I felt was quite jarring was the gap of nothing happening in dungeons. Like you would suddenly run for like 15 seconds with no monsters. And that was more jarring to me than low density. Or like running one monster and then running again. Like that I didn't like at all. I hope when they say density, they don't just mean that a pack has 15 monsters instead of 5, but that also that there's less space between. That's a density issue, just density placement. Yes, but they could just, that's what I mean, right? Like if they're aware of that, that's great. But if they're not and all they do is increase the packs, we're still going to have a large gap between packs.
We need more stash help now, right? And so in 1.1.1, we're going to be adding an additional stash tab for players so they can store more aspects, more Malignant Hearts.
Yeah, this is...
One? I mean, it's better than nothing, but one? Also, they did say on Twitter why they're adding one, by the way. We showed it on stream earlier, and maybe Scry can edit this in, but there was a tweet by Joe, I think, where they said the reason they can't have more stash tabs is because when you see another player, you load all their stash tabs and each item in them. So it's a technical issue with how they've done their coding. I also, I hate that so many things are in the same tab. Like, as an inventory thing, they should make sure, they should move, what is it? What is it Nightmare Sigils share space with? It's Nightmare Sigils and something else. I just can't remember. Flasks. They should add now, like right now, they should add a separate tab for that. There should be a Nightmare Sigil tab and an Elixir tab. That can't be in the same one. That is crazy to me.
I was realizing when I was talking earlier about the changes we made. Obviously, we also made the change to XP gain when fighting creatures above your level, and I failed to mention this discussing it.
Yeah.
So the original intent for that was we found players basically sitting at like fighting creatures like 3 levels above them and never felt like they were really challenging themselves beyond that. We wanted to stretch that out a bit further, but that went from a 25% bonus to a 15% bonus, and we knew that density changes were coming online, so we thought about this a little bit, but. I read a lot of feedback, like afterwards in particular, that just made it sound like people thought that we were just trying to make the game take longer, which wasn't actually the goal, but realized that the 25% to 15% did.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know if I buy that. I feel like nearly every developer, especially developers that are like very like MMO focused, right, with like WoW and stuff, the goal for it very, very often is how do we make the player play longer. It really is. Especially they don't have a large amount of content right now. The number one thing you can do to make the player buy it is to like the best thing that or what feels the best for most players is when you see your next goalpost. When that goalpost keeps moving, right? That's what at least for me, it's different for some people. There are some people that want to finish all the goalposts and then the game starts for them, right? Like for example in Path of Exile, people want Mage Blood, etc. before they start playing the game. But for me, and I think I'm in the majority here, is what feels the best is like when your goalpost just keeps moving. You're finding this thing to do, and then once you've gotten that goal, you set a new one that is within reach, right? And when I start feeling like I'm burnt out is when there starts being a really big gap between the goalpost, right? So it feels really good, like here's my goal, here's my next one, here's my goal, here's my next one, here's my goal, here's my next one. But whenever it's like this, like here's my goal, here's my next one, here a lot of people start burning out, at least for me, and I think probably for a lot of you guys too. Once the goalpost is like very, very long, I'm like, but do I really need that? And then if it's this long, and I know there's nothing past that, like once I'm done with goalposts, that's why like for example survival games for me, like The Forest, etc., like any game like that with what is some other like Icarus, etc. Like I love those games, but as soon as I've researched everything and there's no further goal past that, I'm like, I've already unlocked everything now. The game kind of ends for me when I've finished the progress. Like I love that sense of like progressing through something, and that's why like for me, Path of Exile is such a great game because it does take me a week to finish, right, or 2 weeks to finish. Whereas when you are like, this is a the problem is worse the more of a no lifer you are, right? Because it's so hard to get content for somebody that plays a game for like the RuneScape is the best game in the world for this. No game beats RuneScape for this, right? Because you will never finish RuneScape, right? There's nobody that has finished the completion log in RuneScape. That's why RuneScape is like my my chill off stream game now. I just got my Black Mask after 2,500 Cave Warriors late last night, and yeah, I don't know. It's hard for games to compete.
So we are looking to like really to readjust the XP rates for those areas, because we aren't looking to like have you hit this absolute brick wall when you hit like level 70 or something, right? Like there's not like these moments where we're going.
They should use the word vision, like something that does really good, and people really appreciate hearing is that they have a vision for a game. Like Path of Exile did really well with that.
I feel like you just can't, or 75. Like we don't want you to have this feeling that you just can't make meaningful progress, that we're just artificially holding you back. That's never been the vision or the goal.
Oh my God!
It ended up working out that just it wasn't. The players weren't running speed at the rate that we expected.
The only
there we go.
case that we think is not very fun is the case where one person is standing at the entrance to the dungeon and the other person is having all the fun killing monsters.
Yeah, that's terrible. But you solved it the wrong way.
And so, when we look at the balance of the XP changes in 1.1.0, we think that additional changes need to be made to make the game faster, especially between 50 and 100.
Yeah, we want level 1 to 100 to feel like an achievement, but not like a job.
Yeah.
Right. So like we want to make some adjustments to make sure that it feels fun, very achievable, obviously within the season timeline. But yeah, so we are going to make some adjustments. We'll be talking about more probably next week in terms of with more specificity.
Yes, very soon.
Specificity.
So again, we'll be back on stream next Friday to talk about all the details of the changes, including the barb and like sorcerer changes that Joe had mentioned, along with.
But I really don't understand why nerf. I mean, why not nerf both for that matter? But the thing, like, I understand. Actually, no. For Diablo, I don't fully understand the anti-boosting thing. Right? I really don't fully understand the anti-boosting thing because that's normally something that's gone over so well with Diablo audiences. So it's a little confusing to me as an outsider. But the thing that is so weird is why not nerf the dungeon-wide XP? Why not nerf the dungeon-wide XP? That's so weird. Power leveling, you mean? Yeah. Like, maybe, like, if you're power leveling someone, like, maybe still allow power leveling, but, like, make them that they have to be, like, close to you. Then there's some risk, and it's kind of exciting. People have to do something. But, like, getting power level by literally standing at the start of a dungeon is super, super boring. And the fact that, like, you can play together and be at the other side of the dungeon, that's not a fun way to play together. I want to play with my friends, fighting the same monsters that my friends are. I don't want to, like, kill monsters that are 3 kilometers away. Make it like a screen and a half or 2 screens max. That's weird to me.
Leaderboards and so forth within,
Yes.
and the expectation of when those might be coming in. I know that ideally we're aiming for season 3 for the leaderboards in itself. I don't know if you guys have any like additional information or like additional insight onto those from your end.
Yeah, so one thing that's really important to us for leaderboards in Diablo 4 is that we don't think that like tying this directly to Nightmare Dungeons or content type exactly like that is going to make a lot of sense because the variety of the nature of the system.
Did I do it again?
So we want to make a content type that kind of partners directly with leaderboards so that you can be judged in kind of like this kind of more even playing field.
The leaderboards being delayed to season 3 is so, like, forced. I mean, obviously everything is like this, but it's so, like, it feels so artificial. Because then you have season 1 and 2 that's like, there's so much new stuff. You guys haven't played Diablo that much. And then Diablo 3 season 3, it's like, okay, well, now we need something new and exciting.
When you're going through that experience. But that is content that we are actively in development on and are excited to try to get ready for season 3. So we're going to be making, I'm sorry, the short answer to this is, we'll be excited about our competitive feature. We are making a specific content type that goes alongside that you're judging yourself against, and we're looking for season 3 for that.
wow.
Question from...
Wait, is that all they're gonna say about seasons? Somebody said it would make sense in a second, but nothing they said made sense. How does it make sense that they want to make specific? How does it not make sense that they want to make specific content for the leaderboards? Because people would already love right now if there was a ladder for Nightmare Dungeons, if there was a ladder for levels. Right now, that would be super well received. And it's, what Tawny just said, not worth the leaderboards, but it's worth being carved on a statue at their headquarters. Like, absolutely right. Levels alone, like, people love competing. Like, not everybody, but people love competing. And even people that aren't competitive themselves think it's fun to see where they are on the ladder. So often, I'll see even more casual players. Well, they're not like casual players, but they're not no-lifers either. They'll be like, wow, I'm like 1,200 on the ladder. That's a really cool achievement for me, right? Like, I see so many players that aren't like the top 10 that are like, wow, I'm like top 1,000 or top 10,000. It's cool to see where you are. A lot of people like that, even if they aren't like...
One of our goals underlying is we don't want players to feel that one of these are mandatory, that you must...
Also, important, this is a seasonal game, right? This isn't something you necessarily have forever because the majority of people that play these games play the seasons. So the game restarts every 3 months for the majority of your players. So if you find a Shaco in one season, you don't have that in the next season.
Find an effort to bring your build online. From the ground up, we kind of made the decision to say it is okay if we want players to find these, but we don't want them to expect to find these. Which is a difficult place to balance in terms of drop rates when you're thinking about these. We'll probably make those a little bit more common, a little more likely to be found as time.
Like, what does that mean? Instead of 1 every 500,000 hours played, it's going to be 1 every 300,000 hours played? Like, I don't know if they fully understand the drop rate they put in here. And it's like, it's so crazy that they're untradeable, right? Because that means that they have no... When an item is untradeable, or rather, when an item is tradable, it implicitly gets a value that is really exciting to a lot of players, right? Like, if you're playing a game, and even if you're playing on solo self-found, if you drop a really expensive item, even if you're not going to sell it, even if you're playing solo self-found, that does mean that that item has an implicit value that is interesting, right? Just by the very definition of that you know that normally this has a lot of value, that makes it like implicitly exciting outside of just rarity, outside of just power. So I mean, it's also I feel like they've like really shot themselves so hard in the feet by doing the whole like anti-trading route on a lot of things, because I think there's so many better ways to go around this, because the majority of your players really want to trade, right? Trading is super fun. And I think there are really good uses of soulbound that you can use, really powerful items, to give more power to the players. I used to be very anti-soulbound. That's something that's changed for me in the last 2 years. Path of Exile Sanctum League particularly changed my mind on this. Like, I think there is a place for some items being soulbound, with the majority not being soulbound. And by soulbound, I mean account bound, not character bound.
A big topic that I'm seeing just pop up in chat and so forth. A lot of comments about crowd control,
Sure.
and if there's any plans or ways that we're looking at addressing crowd control here in the future.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, or well, I think we both talked about it. We think that when you have high density of monsters on screen and you have a lot of elites, the crowd control, the tools that you have for crowd control are not, need to be better, basically. And some of that is going to be adjustments to things that feel unfair, and some of that is going to be tool adjustments in terms of your tools. I think that we'll be able to, this is something that we'll be able to speak more to in terms of specifics and how we're going to address that, but...
I also think that as far as like devs go, I really like Joe Shelley. I think early on I felt like he was a little bit like, not depressed, but like a little bit like bland. But I just really appreciate, I think he's my favorite dev to listen to talk, because he's so matter of fact, so to the point on things.
When will loadouts be added?
Oh, before he answers that, I think that was really funny. So obviously Blizzard got accused of fake questions. That's why they're like being really, really careful with like reading out names and like having real names and stuff. But I don't know if everybody knows this, but it wasn't Blizzard faking the questions. It was a journalist page that tweeted out asking for questions, but nobody asked them questions. Nobody, like, that wasn't Blizzard doing this. Like, Blizzard just said they said yes to a journalist that they would answer questions, and the journalist got no questions, so they just made up their own questions. So that wasn't like, it wasn't Blizzard faking that. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, it's a feature that the UI team is very excited about, and something we've talked about a bit internally. We don't have a timeline for the idea of loadouts just yet, but it is something that we're continuing to actively talk about.
Talk more
we
about
have more
it.
information to share in terms of like when something like this could potentially be added to Diablo
I think that's
4. I'm sure
actually
we'll
live.
talk about it. We know that there's more things that we need to add to the game, particularly for World Tier 4.
Particularly map overlay. I really, really hate, like, honestly, like, okay, sometimes developers are right when they go like, you think you do, but you don't. But like a choice like that, oh man, I'm very like pro gaming options or pro gaming choice. Like, it's so nice.
It feels very frustrating to grind for days without ever seeing anything close to an upgrade or finding the right aspect. Even worse, when you finally do it and it's a terrible roll. Slightly, I'm also going to modify that and mention target farming, which has also been a topic within the community. I'm
That's
not sure
good.
if you
I
guys
want to hear more about target farming.
Any plans and so forth for that?
So I think there's a couple parts of this as well, right? There's the idea of I grind for a long time to get an item, and the item is not an upgrade. And particularly when you're in world tiers 3 and 4, where you start dealing with sacred items and ancestral items, where you're kind of dealing with this larger bucket of eye power range, this can certainly tend to be true, unless you're looking for specific kinds of affixes, you're looking for particular kinds of roles, right? We do have plans in season 2 right now to have more content you can try to target farm in order to find certain unique items. And I think there's a natural extension of that to figure out like what's the right way for players to be able to find an easier method of getting into some of the aspects they might be looking for as they're progressing through. So that is something that the rewards and systems teams will be thinking about and hopefully we'll talk.
So they had target farming in Helltides, right? Which they removed because they couldn't figure out how to not have 1 billion shekels drop per hour, correct? Why don't they just have that Helltide chest can't drop Uber uniques? Uber uniques be from any chest only, and you can target farm them. So I don't know, that's frustrating. Like Helltides really should be target farming. To defend them a little bit here, when they do say we're looking at it, that is still nice for a lot of players that don't know if they're even aware of the issue. So for a lot of players, it's still better that they mention it and say we don't have anything to say about this, but the fact that they say it means that they are aware of the issue. That is better than nothing.
Campaign bosses are underutilized.
Yep.
I think there could be more opportunities to fight some of those campaign bosses in the future. I can't comment further on exactly how that will look, but I agree with that sentiment.
Sounds good. Okay.
Joe has often said this, so like we definitely want to make sure we find the right ways to bring act bosses in. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know why. I don't know if this is true, but it really felt like Joe has been saying that, like, why aren't we turning these into Ubers? And then maybe other people are like, oh, I don't know.
I'm going to do one last question here, which is, will there be better loot tables for like treasure goblins, any alternate goblin types specifically for those?
Yeah, I think
Super
I think we
goblins.
loved how many, D3 has like all kinds of
goblins.
There's like 10 different kinds of goblins, or 14.
Do you know, I really feel like they should have learned more from Diablo 3. Like, there are more things that just should have been in by the base. Like, different types of treasure goblins should have been in by default. A treasure goblin having a chance to open a realm to the treasure goblin realm should have been in by default. Cow level probably should have been in by default. A few more things should have been in by default. They should have learned so much from Diablo 3. And it really feels like they didn't. It really does feel like this is a new game starting over from scratch almost.
Thank you guys again for tuning in. We'll see you next Friday.
I think the TLDR for me, and thank you for the raid, the TLDR for me is like, if everything that they say verbally ends up happening, I think everybody's really happy. The problem is that what they say isn't really what ends up happening a lot of the time. And that's like frustrating. Because like what they say though sounds really good. And like I think at least for me as an avid ARPG player, Diablo 4 would be a really scary game to have as my main game right now. Because it's just not ready. It released too soon. Right? It released too soon. So all that matters for me, I will be trying every single season off Diablo 4, and I will be playing it until I'm bored. Whether that is 3 days, a week, or 2 weeks, like at some point, it'll be longer, right? At some point it'll be longer. Like it'll get longer and longer the more they add and the better they add. Inside PoE came out too soon also, but it's a base to build on. It's a bit of a weird comparison considering Path of Exile started as a game made by 3 people that was free with supporter packs. And back then it really was free, right? Because when Path of Exile came out, there was no trade API, so you didn't need to pay for stash tabs. So back in 2012, it literally was free. I don't agree with saying Path of Exile is free today, because today you do need to spend $40 on stash tabs. But this is a $70 game, right? So that's a bit of a difference, in my opinion. This is going to be different for each person, but the valuation I put on games is I want at least 1 hour of entertainment per dollar spent, per US dollar spent, right? That's my personal evaluation of games. So I spent, well, it's a $70 game, but I spent $90 for the early access, right? I spent $90 on Diablo 4, and I've gotten 250 hours out of it. So I've gotten my value out of the game, right? I really have. I have gotten my value out of the game, and I'm going to get more. I'm going to play every single season for a few days, whether that is 2 days or a week or 2 weeks, And I'm expecting that that will increase. Yeah, I don't know. We'll end the video there. I mean, at least they owned up to a lot of mistakes. I haven't had time to play yet, so I'll probably get some time to play Season of the Malignant tomorrow. Obviously, I'm in New Zealand right now, so I'm like doing stuff here. I'll try to do some IRL streams too, but hopefully you guys enjoyed watching the react. Thanks for watching. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.